The day I hired Vanessa Morgan as our wedding planner was the day I unwittingly invited destruction into what should have been the happiest chapter of my life. She arrived at our first meeting with a portfolio of spectacular weddings, glowing testimonials, and a smile that radiated competence and warmth. How could I have known that 6 months later I'd be canceling wedding invitations, while she and my Jason booked a trip to Bali? It began innocently enough. Jason and I had been together for 3 years when he proposed on a snowy evening in Central Park, the lights of the city twinkling around us as he knelt in the freshly fallen snow. I was ecstatic, dreaming of the perfect wedding to celebrate our love. But with both of us working demanding jobs, me as a pediatric surgeon and Jason as a corporate attorney, we quickly realized we needed professional help to plan our dream day. We should hire someone, Jason suggested, after our third attempt to schedule a venue tour fell through due to emergency surgeries and last-minute client meetings. Someone who can handle the details and just present us with options. That someone was Vanessa, recommended by a colleague whose wedding had been, in her words, absolutely flawless, thanks to Vanessa's magic touch. Our first meeting took place at a chic cafe downtown. Jason couldn't make it a client emergency, he explained apologetically. So it was just Vanessa and me, discussing color schemes, venues, and catering options over lattes. "Don't worry about a thing," she assured me, her hand briefly touching mine in a gesture of professional compassion. "I'm here to make this process joyful, not stressful. That's why I limit myself to only 3 clients at a time to ensure each bride gets the attention she deserves." I left that meeting feeling relieved, confident that our wedding was in capable hands. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa proved herself organized and insightful, presenting us with options that somehow perfectly aligned with the vision I hadn't even fully articulated yet. "She's really good," Jason commented after our third joint meeting. "It's like she can read our minds." In retrospect, I should have noticed how his eyes lingered on her as she walked ahead of us during venue tours, how he laughed a little too enthusiastically at her jokes, how he began suggesting they meet without me when my hospital schedule grew particularly demanding. "It makes sense," he argued when I raised an eyebrow. "No point in all 3 of us trying to coordinate schedules when decisions still need to be made." I agreed, exhausted from 36-hour shifts and grateful that wedding plans were progressing despite my limited availability. When Vanessa sent me photos of Jason sampling cake flavors or reviewing floral arrangements, I felt only gratitude that he was so involved. 3 months into the planning process, subtle changes began to appear. Jason started working later, was less available for our regular date nights, seemed distracted during our conversations. I attributed it to work stress, to wedding pressure, to anything but the truth that was slowly taking shape in the periphery of my awareness. The first concrete suspicion came when I was unexpectedly released from a shift early and decided to surprise Jason at a scheduled tasting with Vanessa. I arrived at the restaurant to find them seated close together, her hand resting on his forearm, both of them laughing with the easy intimacy of lovers, rather than the professional rapport of client and planner. They didn't see me immediately. I stood frozen at the entrance, watching as Vanessa leaned closer to whisper something that made Jason smile in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. When the hostess asked if I needed a table, their heads turned simultaneously, identical expressions of shock quickly replaced by overly bright greetings. "Sarah, what a surprise!" Vanessa exclaimed, withdrawing her hand from Jason's arm. We were just discussing the signature cocktail options. Jason couldn't quite meet my eyes. I thought you were stuck at the hospital until 8. Surgery finished early, I said, my voice sounding strange even to myself. I thought I'd join you. The rest of the tasting proceeded with an undercurrent of tension. Vanessa was professionally efficient as always, but there was a new awareness between USA knowledge that neither of us acknowledged as we discussed past AAWs and wine pairings. That night, I asked Jason directly if something was going on. His denial was immediate, indignant even. She's our wedding planner, Sarah. I've been spending time with her because you're always working. Someone has to make these decisions. You seemed ... close, I ventured. We've been planning an entire wedding together, he countered. Of course, we've developed a rapport. She's easy to talk to, that's all. I wanted to believe him. More than that, I needed to believe him. The alternative that the man I loved, the man I was planning to marry in less than 3 months, was having an affair with the very person helping us plan our wedding, was too painful to contemplate. So I pushed my suspicions aside. I made more effort to attend planning meetings despite my grueling schedule. I smiled through venue walkthroughs and floral selections, watching Vanessa's perfect professionalism when I was present, trying to convince myself that what I'd seen had been a momentary lapse, nothing more. But the doubts lingered, growing stronger with each passing week. Jason's phone, once casually left on coffee tables and countertops, was now perpetually in his pocket, the screen carefully angled away from me when he checked messages. He began taking calls in another room, his voice dropping to a murmur I couldn't quite make out. I became someone I didn't recognize, checking his call logs when he was in the shower, scrolling through his emails when he left his laptop open, searching for evidence of what I increasingly feared was happening. The confirmation came in the most mundane way. Jason had asked me to grab his passport from his desk drawer. We were discussing a potential honeymoon destination, and he wanted to check if his passport needed renewal. In the drawer, beneath the passport, was a hotel receipt from a boutique hotel downtown, dated 2 weeks earlier, on a night Jason had claimed to be working late. My hands trembled as I held the paper, the room suddenly airless around me. I pulled out my phone and searched the hotel's website. It was exactly the kind of place Vanessa would choose, stylish, discreet, with an award-winning restaurant and an emphasis on privacy. When Jason returned from his shower, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, the receipt in my hand, my engagement ring glinting cruelly in the lamplight. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked quietly. He didn't pretend not to understand. The mask of deception fell away as he sank into the chair across from me, his face a mixture of guilt and what looked unsettlingly like relief. "I didn't know how," he admitted. "I never meant for this to happen, Sarah. It just ... did. With our wedding planner." My voice was hollow. "While planning our wedding. The timing is inexcusable," he acknowledged. "I know that." What followed was a conversation so surreal, I sometimes wonder if it actually happened, or if I dreamed it in some fever of betrayal. Jason spoke of unexpected connection, of feeling understood in ways he hadn't before, of how he and Vanessa had tried to fight their attraction out of respect for me, for our history. We kept telling ourselves it was just temporary feelings, that they would pass, he explained, as if this somehow mitigated the betrayal. But they only got stronger. "How long?" I asked, needing to know, yet dreading the answer. 2 months, he admitted. "It started after the floral studio visit. I remembered that Di'd been pulled into emergency surgery and had missed yet another appointment. Vanessa had sent me photos of Jason surrounded by sample arrangements, his smile wide as he held up various options for my approval. Now I wondered if she'd taken those photos before or after they'd crossed the line from professional to intimate. "I'm so sorry," Jason said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away, unable to bear his touch. "I never wanted to hurt you, but you did," I said simply. "You are." The next few days were a blur of painful logistics. Jason moved out, taking only what he immediately needed. I contacted our families, friends, the venue, dismantling the wedding piece by piece, like reverse planning. Each cancellation was a fresh wound, each returned gift a reminder of the future that had been stolen from me. Vanessa, to her credit, or perhaps her shame, made no attempt to contact me. She had already transferred all vendor contracts and deposits to my name, relinquishing her role as planner with a brief, formal email that contained not a single word of apology or explanation. 2 weeks after Discovery Day, I ran into them at a restaurant across town, a place Jason and I had never frequented, where he had likely felt safe from unexpected encounters. They were seated in a corner booth, her head resting briefly on his shoulder, before they noticed me standing near the host station. The moment stretched between Usmai in my wrinkled scrubs, coming off a 12-hour shift, them polished and put together, the picture of a happy couple enjoying a night out. Jason half rose from his seat, an awkward greeting forming on his lips. Vanessa remained seated, her eyes meeting mine with a complex mix of guilt and defiance. I didn't stay. There was nothing to say that would change what had happened, nothing to be gained from a public confrontation. I turned and walked out, the cool evening air a welcome relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. That night, alone in what had once been our apartment, I finally allowed myself to fully feel the magnitude of what I'd lost. Not just Jason, not just the wedding we'd planned, but my faith in the predictability of life, my trust in my own judgment. How had I not seen this coming? How had I been so blind to what was happening right in front of me? In the months that followed, I threw myself into work, finding solace in the one area of my life where I still felt competent and in control. Friends rallied around me, offering support, distraction, shoulders to cry on. My mother came to stay for a week, helping me pack away the wedding gifts that had already arrived, removing all traces of wedding planning from the apartment. "You'll get through this," she assured me, as we folded tissue paper around crystal glasses that would never grace the table Jason and I had chosen together. "It doesn't feel like it now, but one day this will just be a painful chapter in your story, not the whole book." I wanted to believe her. Some days I even managed to catch glimpses of that possible future, a life reconstructed from the ruins of what I'd thought was certain. A self strengthened by surviving what I'd feared would break me. 6 months after what should have been my wedding day, I received a postcard from Bali. No message, just a glossy image of a sunset over rice terraces, with Vanessa's elegant handwriting providing my address. A taunt, a misguided attempt at closure. I'll never know, because I tore it into pieces without a second thought. It was the last direct contact I had with either of them. Through mutual friends, I later heard they'd moved to Chicago, where Vanessa started a new wedding planning business and Jason joined a different law firm. Sometimes I wonder if she plans their wedding with the same meticulous attention to detail she once promised me. If he looks at venue options with her and feels echoes of déjà vu, I kept the engagement ring for nearly a year, tucked in a drawer like a talisman of a different life. When I finally sold it, I used the money to fund a 2-week medical mission to Guatemala finding healing. Ironically, in the same profession that had often kept me away from wedding planning, that had given Jason and Vanessa the space and opportunity for their betrayal. The night I returned from Guatemala, I met friends for dinner at a new restaurant downtown. As we were leaving, a woman brushed past me at the door, elegantly dressed, her perfume familiar in a way that made my heart stutter. For a moment, I thought it was Vanessa, and I felt the old pain rear up, sharp and immediate. But it wasn't her. Just a stranger, with a similar style, a ghost of a memory that still had the power to wound. "You okay?" my friend asked, noting my sudden paleness. "I'm fine," I said, and realized with surprise that it wasn't entirely a lie. The pain was there, but duller now, more manageable, a scar rather than an open wound. 3 years have passed since the day I hired Vanessa Morgan to plan what I thought would be the happiest day of my life. In that time, I've been promoted to chief resident, bought a small house with a garden where I grow vegetables and herbs, adopted a rescue dog who greets me with unrestrained joy every evening. My life looks nothing like what I'd planned, yet somehow contains riches I hadn't anticipated. I still think about them sometimes, Jason and Vanessa, the wedding planner who found their own happiness at the expense of mine. Not with the searing pain of fresh betrayal, but with a kind of detached curiosity. Did they realize the extent of what they took from me? Do they ever regret the way their story began? But those questions belong to a different story, not mine. My story continues beyond the betrayal, beyond the canceled wedding and the returned gifts, beyond the cruel irony of losing the person I'd trusted to help us celebrate our love. My story is about rebuilding after betrayal, about finding strength in the ruins of what I thought was certain, about learning that while trust, once broken, may never be the same, it can be renewed in different forms, with greater wisdom and deeper resilience. Sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in the aftermath of forest fires. Sometimes the most authentic lives emerge from the ashes of what we thought we wanted. Sometimes the wedding planner steals and somehow, eventually, impossibly, you find yourself grateful for the theft.